Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third day of FCI Live 2025. We are so glad to have you here. We are well into our first week of this two-week series that we hold every year, and this is our Timelines internal and external session. And we're going to get started with that in just a minute. First, we just want to thank real quick our FCI Live champion sponsors. We have three this year. Thank you so much to National Co-op Grocers, .coop, and Colluminate for making this series possible. We really appreciate it. With that, we're going to jump into the session. So I want to first, as I said before, let y'all know that this is going to be a very instructional session. We're going to be looking at timelines and how we utilize them. And I first want to put it in context of where this fits in the co-op development framework. So FCI released last year the FCI Startup Development Framework. You can find it on our website. And it was actually built from an earlier style of organizing tool, also that was called the 4 and 3 model. It has been adapted and updated with what we know now. And just give you a picture, this session, this exact topic on timelines is really focused, and these tools are used in stage 2 and stage 3 startup food co-op development. So if you're just getting started, or if you are much further on, those of you who are just getting started will see what's coming up ahead and learn something about a tool that you'll be using in the future. For those of you who are further along, I've got some adaptions I'll show you toward the end, especially for the external facing timelines that you might find especially useful to talk about and think about. But so you know, it's going to be focused mostly, this tool is used in stage 2 and 3 development. Timeline tools, then, also what part of what we do, where does it fit? I'm actually going to go back for a second and say, just real quick, there are these sorry, 5 pieces. No, right, 1, 2, 3. I am 4 pieces to the development framework. The vision is the reason we have our co-op, our core values, and the business plan to meet it. It's the thing we're driving toward at all times. The stages are the steps, the milestones we must move through to get to that vision. The resources are the things that we need to do all the work through the stages. And then you have on this outside, this gray rim that's called the areas of work. Co-op organizing, governance, and business development. Those are the work you're doing in each of the stages with those resources to get to that vision. And I'm pointing this out because the timelines are very specifically tools that are aligned with the areas of work, more prevalently, especially the internal timelines. And so just to give kind of a little framing, used a lot in stage 2 and 3 development and growth work for startup food co-ops, and specifically used to align your areas of work and to get the work done. So there are 2 types of timelines, and we're going to go into a little bit of an overview of those. So first off, what do we mean by timeline? When I'm saying timeline, I mean that I'm talking about the maps of all the milestones that must be reached for the organization, for the organizing of your food co-op. So there are 2 types when we're organizing a community-owned startup food co-op, and we hear the term timeline used a lot, but these 2 types of timelines, these maps to where we're going and how far along we are on the journey of organizing our startup food co-op, are pretty distinctly different. And so we wanted to have a session where we kind of clarified that and tell you what tools do and don't exist to help you build those timelines, and where you can find some examples from your peers. So the 2 different kinds, first off, internal timelines are one thing, and again, external another, and they have different audiences. That's the first way to start. The audience is very different. How we use them is too. We'll get a little more into that. But internal timelines, the audience is the core organizing team of your startup food co-op. So, and to be honest, these 2 types of timelines, I have been the general manager of an existing food co-op before, and when we have done expansion projects, these are the same. You use these tools if you're developing a brand new startup food co-op. You also should be using very similar tools if you are organizing a expansion, an addition to your store, a remodel, any large project for a food co-op. So the internal timelines audience is the core organizing team. So in a startup food co-op, that means your board. If you have any paid staff of your startup food co-op, they would be included in that core organizing team. And then what we call owner organizers. And we have a whole other session at some point that we need to record. We've done it for some of our peer groups, but there's volunteers, owners who volunteer, and then there's owners who are organizers who help you get things done. Generally, they're the owners who are running an entire committee or very active in a committee. I mean, they are in the work. They have taken on a piece of responsibility, even if it's not like on the board, but they're like, I am on, the outreach committee and or I'm on the volunteer committee and I train all the volunteers, or I'm the person who does all the recording of all the data, or I'm the person who organizes your newsletter. That owner, we call them an organizer. They are a core organizer. They have a piece of work they're responsible for. They're not just showing up and going, okay, what do I do, boss? And tabling, which is very useful and helpful, but that's a volunteer, different than an organizer. So your core organizing team is that board, any paid staff, owner organizers. Those are the audience for this tool, and it is utilized to coordinate all the work being done to grow the co-op and open its store. All the little minutia and different areas of work that we need to be covering and making sure we're keeping an eye on throughout the process. So we'll get a little more into that in a bit. Now, the external timelines have a very different audience and a very different purpose. So, an external timelines audience is all stakeholders in the food co-op. And what I mean by that, this is again focused on startup food co-ops, but it is not really very different for those of you who are established food co-ops who are going to take on a major project. So, those audiences, woo those stakeholders. Yes, your owners and members, absolutely. And people use those terms interchangeably at food co-ops. Your potential vendors, or if you're an open co-op, your actual current vendors, but also your city, county officials, your potential funders for the project, the community, the overall larger community the co-op defines in its purpose, or some people call it their mission statement. We prefer purpose, that they exist to serve. Everyone, all those are all stakeholders in the co-op. We're talking about everyone who is not a core organizer. If they're a core organizer, the internal timeline is meant for them and their work. The external timeline, though, is aimed at every other stakeholder, every other person who has a stake in the co-op, for whom the co-op will have impacts, who can provide value, who will want to interact with that co-op. And owner members, of course, being the most important, but potential vendors, funders, these are all really important stakeholders, and all of them, the external timeline is critical to their understanding and buy-in to your co-op and to your co-op's project. All right. One other thing that's really easy and upfront that you can know about the difference between these two is that internal timelines, the level of detail is high. We'll look at a couple examples of those. The external timeline, the level of detail, and I got to change this as audience here, level of detail is low. We are trying to take people along on a journey with us who are not involved in the day-to-day work and don't have the time, but want to understand where we're going. And we'll spend more time on that when we get to more in detail about external timelines. But this is another very distinctive difference. Who's the audience? Core organizers or everyone with a stake in the food co-op? The level of detail, very high. Internal timeline is a planning tool, is a project management tool. An external timeline is a communications tool, is a buy-in creation tool, is a we're on the journey together tool. It is an education tool above all, rather than an organizing your work tool. So we're going to step back for a minute and take some time to really better understand internal timelines and what we do and don't know about them so far in the work that we do. Now, I'm going to pre-warn you now that FCI doesn't have one standard internal timeline spreadsheet that we're like, here you go, here's the tool. We have some examples, and we are happy to share those examples with you. At the end, I will ask folks that if you would like to receive some of the examples I'm going to go over of internal timelines, some of the pieces, I'm going to I have a folder of those. If you put your email in the chat, I am going to send those examples to you. But there isn't just one, and there's reasons for that. Anyone who's done real project management knows everybody likes different tools. But let's get started here. Internal timelines organize your work. That is their number one purpose. What is the purpose? And there are multiple, but the number one purpose of internal timelines is to organize your work, to help you keep track of what needs to be happening in each area of work at the same time and the impacts they have on each other in getting things done. One thing I didn't put on this slide here is this tool. Who holds this tool? Who's responsible for this tool? This is the board's tool, or if you're pre-board's, the steering committee's tool. So they will have utilize it with all organizers, all core organizers of the food co-op, but it is their tool. They're the ones who are creating it, keeping it up to date, sharing it with folks, right? So this is the board, remember, pre-open. If you're a startup food co-op, pre the general manager's arrival for sure, and definitely pre-open, you are a working board. And as a working board, you're actually holding oversight of all the work and development. And as many of you know from living it, you're actually doing a lot of the actual just day-to-day work as well. But you do, even as you learn to delegate well, into committees, to professional consultant support that you've brought on. Maybe you have a little bit of staff at some point. No matter who you learn to delegate some of that to, so the board can focus in on its oversight role, you're always going to be holding this pre-open, pre-GM. You're going to be holding the overview of all the work and making sure all the pieces are being addressed and deciding who has authority over which of these pieces of work. So this is the board's tool. Okay. Thanks, guys. Yeah. Why don't we go ahead if you're going to want copies of the examples. Again, remember, these are just some examples that you will need to build what works for you off of internal timelines for startup food co-op specifically. That's what the examples will be. Go ahead and throw your email in the chat now. So I know that that's what folks are throwing in the chat at the moment. So this tool, again, as I said, the internal timelines, this comes from the piece of the development framework that is called the areas of work, which are co-op organizing, business development, and governance. A good internal timeline for a startup food co-op is going to cover these three areas because these are where we have to be working in every stage. We got to be getting co-op organizing done. We got to be doing business development, and we got to do governance. Now, in different stages, there's different levels of focus on each of these, but in every stage of a startup food co-op's development in the framework, we are doing all three areas of this work. So the internal timeline is going to cover those three areas and make sure we know what needs to be happening and are keeping track. Part of why we started developing these areas of work, which didn't used to exist in the framework years back, and these timelines based on it, is because we saw every startup food co-op has different strengths. Every organizing team has different strengths. This is absolutely understandable, normal. It's the way humans are. And we'll see some startup food co-ops that are incredible co-op organizers, but they aren't business development, or they have this amazing business development team, but they kind of let the co-op organizing fall to the side, and all startup food co-ops tend to let governance fall to the side, which is how we share power within a cooperative. And these things are all incredibly important. What we saw is some startups would get really far along in one part and be excellent, and they'd be like, okay, we got to 1,000 owners, now we're ready. In this case, let's say they were waiting for 1,000 owners, and it's different co-ops to commit to a site. But they hadn't done half of the business development work that was necessary to know what a viable site would be for them and be ready to commit to a site. So we got our 1,000 owners, and now it's like, oh, we have a year of business development backlog to do. Or we've got this site, we've got a viable business plan for inside the site, blah, blah, and be like, oh, but we have 23 owners and we aren't really well known in the community and we aren't connected to partner organizations doing similar work and no one really knows what the heck we're doing. They're not kind of with us on this journey, and that would hold them back. And then governance, we see this consistently, is that quite often co-ops get to the end of what we call stage 3 and then go, oh, we've been kind of winging how we share power and our policies and how we do things. And now it's time to have a general manager and to delegate vast amounts of authority, and we're not prepared. And all of these pieces have held co-ops back, have held startups back in their organizing by not keeping them in line and together. And so we developed these 3 areas of work to let us know we need to have our eyeballs on all 3, and our timeline needs to cover those. And if we're like, what should we be doing in governance right now? At least we see that empty column, right? And we can go find out and we can think about it. And sometimes we also can see, oh, look, co-op organizing's cooking along. They're doing these community meetings. They're on par, they're on track to be at 1,000 owners in 6 months. And we don't even have we don't have a viable financial pro forma yet. Uh-oh, business development needs to kind of catch up. These two are going to impact each other. So that's a big piece of what it's for. The other thing is, and the one that most startups enjoy or are more excited about is it gives us line of sight. This is actually an example on the screen of an older timeline that was pre the framework. So the sections aren't quite the same, but you can see governance, ownership, co-op organizing, and then capital. There were several columns for business development. And if you're going to get the examples, you'll get this example to give you an idea. And what it could let you do is it could let you see also, let's say we're in late stage two. Here's all the big stuff we need to get done. And if we map out loosely when that could probably happen, probably by this state, we could be done with the pro forma. And then maybe by this date, we could get to this ownership number. And you actually can map down and get a loose idea of how soon you can open. And you can not only see what's coming and get prepared because you know, oh, these are the things that happen that need to happen that will be happening in the future. Let's just kind of loosely put them in there so we see them coming, that line of sight, right? But also the thing people are most excited about is if we map it all out, we can get a realistic picture of when we might be able to open. That does not mean we should go out and tell everyone, look, spring 2027, woo woo, we did a little time. All these things have to happen yet, right? But we can know if we're that far back still, like stage two, we're aiming for there. And if we can get these pieces done as we've got them lined out here, we probably can do that. And if one of those pieces gets pushed back, and that happens, and that's normal, that's part of the process, but that also means everything else gets pushed back, and we can move those pieces through the timeline and see how that is loosely affecting our hoped for opening and what's reasonable. It also helps because I don't know how many here who can raise their hands, but how many of us have had a lot of startups have had developers, landowners, building owners come to them and go, hey, I've got the perfect site for you. Let's go. Well, if you're keeping your timeline in your stage two and you know not only are you here, but there's these 20 steps before you're going to be ready to raise the money so you can open the store and they want you to take the site now, commit to it, sign on the dotted line, and open in a year, that's not going to fit. And you know that then because you have that tool and you can look at it. And it also empowers you. It empowers you to say, hey, partner, that would be phenomenal. And we're excited and we're interested. Our current timeline says that we would need to do all this business feasibility work on your site, and we might be ready to raise all the money by here. Let's try and bring our two timelines together. But it allows you to then going, why can't you do it now? Here are the 10-step reasons why we can't do it now. Here's where we are in our timeline. So it's a very empowering tool. As people who are lay leaders of, we're all working right here. You're here this session trying to learn to be an expert in something in your quote unquote spare time, right? You're a student, you have a job, you're a parent, you're a caregiver, whatever all your other responsibilities are. This is the additional thing, right? We didn't go to school for this. This is the thing we're doing to organize for our communities. And so this gives us a little bit of that expertise and that tool to be able to say, no, see, I do know what I'm doing. This is what's coming up. This is what the steps that successful food co-ops have had to go through. And now I can say to you, yeah, we love that you're excited about us, but we're not ready. Here's what we need to do to get ready. Okay. So that's about internal timelines and what they're used for and how they're organized a little bit. Now, external timelines, as I said, different audience, everyone who's a stakeholder, and different level of detail. Now, when I say high detail for those internal timelines, project management, and again, I'm going to send you some example spreadsheets. Keep in mind, I know some of you startups are already using project management software. Some of you are really confident in those. Some of you like different kind of spreadsheets. Some of you are different kinds of software. Whichever you're using, and this is why we don't have one standardized one, we have a couple of simple spreadsheet examples for you to get started from. You're going to have to build the tool that works right for your team, but you want to have those three areas of work. And are we keeping them covered no matter what kind of tool you've got? Okay. The external timeline, it is much lower in detail, right? But lower in detail is not because, oh, we're keeping people in the dark. Let's talk about what it does. So, what could be if we know our audience is everyone who's a stakeholder, especially owners who just aren't going to get involved in active organizing, who are care, are members, or but are just not going to be serving on committees, which is the vast majority of our member owners. If that's our audience, them plus everyone else who could possibly care about the co-op, including our potential lenders, our potential landlords, and our potential vendors, all of them, if that's our audience, and we know it's going to be simpler, what are some of the potential goals of an external timeline? If we're trying to talk to that audience, what could it be doing for us? Why would we build one? If anyone wants to throw anything in the chat, I'm gonna share some reasons, but I bet you can hit some of them. If anyone wants to, don't have to. And I would have some thoughts of what the goals of the internal one, keep on the same page and keep things moving, make sure we dot our I's, cross our T's. What are some goals for the external? Get excitement in the community. All right. Zachary I should have like a little board, a family feud. That's ding, ding, ding. That's my number 5, 1 of 5. Good call. Get people excited in the community for sure. Anyone else with what could be a goal of an external timeline? Growing membership. Yep. Funding proposal for potential funders to be part of the communication to them to get them on board with the project. Yes, love that. All right, those are some good. Oh, building partnerships, community education and engagement. Yep, absolutely. Education, ding, 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 ding. That'd be way high up on the Family Feud board. Keeping people educated and connected to the co-op. I knew you guys would know some of these already. All right, so let's take a look at some of the goals. You caught a lot of them of an external timeline. Number 1, Dina got it. Ding, ding, ding. Number 1 goal of an external timeline is to educate folks. It is, as a startup food co-op organizer, it is incredibly hard to get your head around what it means to organize a food co-op, what is happening, who's in charge of it. And we are trying to take hundreds, nay, thousands of people who are stakeholders or potential future stakeholders in our co-op along with us on the journey. And they are not going to dedicate the amount of time and energy we do as core organizers of our food co-op, right? But they need to understand what's going on to care and to be invested and for them to actually be part of growing this food co-op, for it not to be just you and your core organizers off in a corner doing the thing and then showing up and going, ta-da! We have this idea for a store, and we got this far along, and everyone's like, what? We didn't even know it was going to be a grocery store. We thought it was going to be a food bank. And we've seen that happen, right? So what we need to be doing is taking people along through education. And a tool like an external timeline is a very quick, easy educational tool for folks so they understand what it takes to. How many, you don't have to raise your hand, but I know all of you who are startup food co-op owners would raise it, have heard the question, but why does it take so long? That's a reasonable question for humans to ask, right? When we get an announcement that, some chain grocery store is coming to our community, they're usually opening in the next 6 months, or at least claiming they are. And we just, and ta-da, we're getting a blank. And everyone's like, oh, yep. And then in 6 months, they're like, oh, yep, there it is. All done, right? Like we're not used to knowing and understanding what it takes to build a grocery co-op. And honestly, these chains are doing almost everything you guys are doing except for the community organizing. But when it comes to the business development, years of studying locations, sales potential, what the product mix should be, they're doing all this for years before they make an announcement. But we're not used to seeing that piece. So the external timeline pulls back the curtain. It says, here's in short form, some of the things we're going to have to do together as a community to get a food co-op open. And it shows this is what the board and the core organizers have been working on. We are not hiding behind a curtain doing nothing. So that is number 1. 2, back to that setting expectations, right? Setting realistic expectations of the process for everyone is important. Your potential landlords, your owners above all. Your owners and potential landlords are the number 1 ones, but also everyone who could get invested. I've seen a lot of folks say, our mayor is so excited about the project, but now she's really upset because we found out this thing's not going to open for 3 more years. So I was like, well, Because, and it's not giving anyone any shade, but because we haven't explained, your mayor is no more aware of the stages it takes to develop the right food co-op to fit into a community and to organize a cooperative at the same time than anyone else out there who isn't a specialist in grocery or a specialist in co-ops. So everyone we want to care about and believe in the co-op, they need to have reasonable expectations. And their unreasonable expectations are understandable if we can't show them what reasonable expectations are. We're all new to this. So an external timeline educates and sets those expectations. The other big thing it does is it includes folks. You do need to have a core organizing team because, as you know, there's so much you need to know, so much you need to learn. You're going to be hiring experts. It's a lot. And not everybody is going to be able to be along for every step of that journey. It is not even going to make sense for everyone to be a part of every step and every decision. There's some decisions the board's going to have to take on their own without owner input to protect the business you're all hoping to develop together, like site. Usually the final site selection, and we highly recommend the final site selection is not a community vote because that exposes you, and it's a whole other session, but for real, we have seen developers, other grocery chains snap up a site that a co-op was voting on. It's only happened a few times, but that's all it's got to happen. Snap up that site and say, oh, we'll just rent it for the next 20 years so you can't have it. They do see you as competition. Do not trust, no matter how much bigger they are than you, and they're 3 miles outside of town, but if everyone in that neighborhood shopping there, they do see a food co-op as competition and they are keeping an eye on you. I can give lots of examples. And so we can't include everyone in every decision, even if they wanted to, even if they could attend every meeting. And if they're attending every meeting, by the way, get them to run for the board. But we need them yet in the same time to feel like they're important because they are. We are building this co-op as a community. We are doing it together. As a general manager, someone who's been a general manager who's expanded a store that had thousands of owners and, dozens of staff, I was not expanding the food co-op. The staff and I were, the board and all of those thousands of owners in our different ways, we're doing that together. We had different roles within it. But if you see it as I'm doing this, the co-op piece is lost and there's so much power to that, right? And so when we include people through an external timeline, say, hey, this is where we're at. This is where we've gotten to. This is what we need to accomplish next and how you can help. Then we're in it together. And that sense of ownership builds momentum. It'll grow the owner base. It'll grow future board members you never knew about, future shoppers. It will get your community to really care because they know they're intrinsic and important. They're included. And then the last goal, which was hit in the chat as well, Zachary hit, is hopefully, if we do this all well, if external timeline is doing a good job of communicating, we're exciting people. They're part of something bigger than themselves. They understand what's going on. They understand the amount of work we've all accomplished together. It's exciting. So it has a lot of different goals. Now, what an external timeline can look like can take many forms. This is an example. This is actually a tool, and I'm going to show you in a second exactly where to find it, that we do offer on the FCI website. So it is actually fill outable. You can take it into Canva and you can put in your colors. You can change all the text. You can even change some of the elements and make this your own for your food co-op. This is just one example, but we had a lot of requests from folks because some of us have people on our teams who are all into the graphic design and some of us don't, right? We have different strengths on different boards and organizing teams. And so this question came up a lot. So we have this tool on our website. And this is, I'm going to give you some other visual examples as we go here, but this is one way it can look. And what is this covering? First off, on the left, you will see number of owners. I'm going to express as we go on here that a number of owners still very much matters because it shows investment from the community. And also it actually brings in real dollars in owner shares that are important to our pro forma. But above all, it shows that we've gotten the word out and that people are excited and are invested in our co-op. It's going to be critical to our success. And if you're working with co-op lenders, they know that too, and they're going to be looking for this. But we used to say, if you get to X hundred owners, then you can do Y. And we don't say that anymore. And that's because what we found is accidentally doing some harm in that your community might be a community of 5,000 people or of 2 million people. And depending on, and everywhere in between, depending on the type of store you're trying to open, the size of your community, these goals can be different. And we do have a couple webinars specifically on what are the factors in setting your ownership goals on that YouTube site that Mercedes linked, if you want to take a look. But so we encourage you to have it there to like kind of know how many owners you want to be at by open when you're ready, when you know that number and kind of have this here and show people what we're trying to get to, but not to tie the development steps to a specific number. Okay, so what it does show is, and this is actually still showing the previous framework model, so 1 through 3B and C instead of 1 through 5, but it's the same basic premise, which is it says, hey, stage 1, we need to get these things done. And these may not be identical to your community. Again, these are going to be adjustable, but these are a good place to start. This is what we need to get done during the next stage, the next stage, the next stage, and here's where we are. And you can even check these boxes off that you can go in and write whatever you want. Like, we got to 500 owners. That's ends up being your stage 2 goal. And you put that there and then you can check the box and show people we're making progress. This is one way it can look. Now to find this, just real quick for those of us, I'm a very visual person, so in case you are too, you can find this tool at our website, www.fci.coop. And the easiest way to find it, in my opinion, is just go to the upper right-hand corner and click on that little magnifying glass, little search function magnifying glass, and then type in the word timeline. And the very first thing that will pop up is the FCI timeline template. And that is this tool here that you see, completely adjustable for your co-op. Even if it's not ended up being exactly the tool you're going to use, it's a great place to start playing and go, oh, I want our timeline to do this and give you some ideas on what you want yours to look like. So, and for those who want a little more instruction on how to use it, the actual physical, how do you go in and use it? We actually have a whole video on that. You can find more about this tool and how to utilize it on our YouTube page, which Mercedes linked in the chat. And just go to our specific page, so Food Co-op Initiative, all one word, on YouTube. And there's a search function. I've circled it here in red. Again, that little magnifying glass, the little search function that will be specific to our page. Once you're on our page, it'll be under our name, and you just write in timeline, and there pops up a video called Using Visual Timelines. And that will show you how to use this tool. And the creator of it from the Firebrand Cooperative walks us through how to physically utilize it. Just want to throw that in there for those of you who need to go find that thing. Need the visual guide. I know I do. Okay, so I did mention external timelines. We no longer tie them to owner numbers. And this is from Prairie Food Co-op and Lombard, Illinois. They no longer use this timeline either. It's just a beautiful example, so I kept it. They have progressed past this and actually will be opening soon. But this is an old one of theirs. And it used to be tied to, see, if you'll see here as I was talking about, 600 owners and we'll do this, 1,000 owners and we'll do this. And we were recommending this. And you can do it. You can say, well, we have figured out ownership wise before we do, by the time we open, we probably want to be at like 2,500 owners, and we're breaking that down. And so, you know what might really help galvanize some ownership growth? This year, we need to get to 1,000 owners. We really, really need to get to 1,000 owners by the end of this year to get to the next thing we need to do. All right. We're going to tie that 1,000 owners. That will show us that we have the excitement, the investment of the community, that we've gotten the message out, that we're really ready. The community is ready for us to now to start to commit to a site and start to fund the actual building of the store. So we're going to go ahead and tie in our external timeline this work. We're hoping at the end of the year to be ready to commit to a site. We're going to tie that, and we want to tell them that this is our goal this year. This is where we're heading. But we're going to tie it to this ownership number and do ownership growth campaigns around it and drive people toward that. That's not a bad idea at all. What we're saying is that you don't have to tie every one of the steps you're educating people about that are coming up or that have happened to an ownership number. It's a potential tool to help people understand that getting the word out and getting people committed to the co-op is an important part of being a develop and get to opening. All right. So another example, this one's from Bay City, who I think may be on the call. I always thought this was visually a beautiful one. What they did, I really love here, is they showed you what they'd already gotten done. This is one of the best uses of an external timeline if you're well into stage two or stage three, is to show people we already got stuff done. Now, remember, this is tied to ownership growth. They did that because we told them to. And there are times that that is useful, but it doesn't always have to be the case, and you need to adjust the numbers to your community. These numbers were right for them at that time. That does not mean it'll be right for your community. But what they did so well is first they branded the heck out of it. Good job, Bay City. So people know it's them. If you were our last session, you saw more on the importance of branding, that people know it's your co-op, your project. And they showed what we've already gotten done. This is another great thing to show people we're getting things done, you're in the process, and to take them on the journey with you. As a visual person, right? I know, Jason, right? Like I'm in love with this. Like there's a few things I would change now that they would probably change now too, knowing what they know now. But visually, this thing is, I love this. So I couldn't take it out, even though it's an older one. So again, so we're looking at it needs to be fun, it needs to be dynamic, it needs to have your branding, it needs to show what we need to get accomplished at each stage. And then Bay City points out to us and what we've already gotten accomplished. Make a big deal out of that. All right. And then also there is the use of short-term external timelines too. A short-term external timeline can be very effective. And what it is we hope ideally is that it's a breakout of a specific time period in your larger timeline. So hopefully you've been educating since some point in stage two with a timeline about the steps and the steps we need to get through. And you don't have to put dates any more than you have to put owner numbers to those, especially if you're like in stage two and there's a lot of work ahead. We're trying to educate people about where we've got to get and why we're not opening tomorrow, because these are clearly important things written under them that need to happen, and how much we've gotten done. We don't need to tie that. So you're like, well, we're in stage two and we hope to open in 2 years, but it could be, like, you don't have to tie dates to it. But what you can do is what's been done here is that larger educational timeline, these co-ops have pulled out a section of that timeline for a specific period to accomplish either showing people progress, or and what we've already gotten done, or to get them really excited about what's coming up in the short term and give them a little more information. So, and I have trying to remember, I'm pretty sure the one on the left is from Grand Rapids Food Co-op in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, which is free range, free range. There are two Grand Rapids, one in Minnesota, they're free range, one's in Michigan. I think this is free ranges, and their current one. And so they've got a larger educational timeline, but they broke out like, look where we are. We've already finished these things recently. We're here. And if then we have these next couple things to knock out together, we could be here. That is very galvanizing and exciting. And it doesn't, if as long as it exists connected to a larger context, it isn't confusing either. If we did just this, wait until the end, until we're this close to being able to break ground, and then we suddenly go, hey, we've accomplished all this, we're here, it can give the tone of like, oh, I'm about to get my store, rather than, oh, we've been on this journey and now we're close to this exciting thing. But I love this as a breakout educational tool to get people excited about the moment you're in right now, or your goals right now for this year. I've seen that the other Grand Rapids used one in Michigan, similar, that they're not that close to opening the store. They're getting there fast now, but they weren't at the time. And they broke out the year and said, these are our goals for this year, so we can get to opening our co-op in 2 years, which is our hope. So this year, these are our goals we created, and these are the things that got to get knocked out. Here's what we've gotten done so far. Here's the bullet parts of what's going to happen. So people knew how they could plug in and what they should be watching for. And their big goal was ownership growth. Their ownership growth was lagging their business development. And so that year was all that really a breakout educational external timeline saying this year's about ownership growth, and here are the things we're trying to hit and when. So people are like, okay, that's what we're focused on this year, right? We're taking them on the journey and getting them excited about the one thing you probably hear the most complaints about, which is we're just working on ownership growth. When do I get my store? And they turned it into something exciting. If we can knock this out together this year, team, and here are the steps to that, and here are the numbers associated with that, then we can get to our store within X amount of time. The one on the right, though I wanted to illustrate, can be, I loved this. This is Austin Community Food Co-op in Chicago. They're at the opposite end of the journey. They were, when they put this out there, very beginning, they're in the stage one organizing. You're like, well, they're like, we actually in stage one don't usually know quite enough yet about the vision for what the business plan for what the store will be to really build all of the timeline. Maybe we can build some of the educational timeline, but the bullet points are pretty loose. We usually say get really serious about your educational external facing timeline in stage two. So they knew they didn't have all that. So what they do instead to still use the power of the external timeline, they said, here's what we're trying to accomplish in 2024 as your steering committee to get us ready for the real growth of our store together as a community. And they showed what those things are and how far along they were in the process by how they colored in the little dots. We've got this completed, and these are things that are in process. These are especially helpful in those early stages when you first get everyone excited and you're meeting with the community and you get that survey and it was like, yeah, and they're like, and now our store, like, yeah, that's still a couple of years away, at least. There's a lot of work, and it can look like the steering committee and board kind of disappear after getting everyone excited. What are you guys doing? This was how Austin was showing we're doing a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things going on, and we're getting it knocked out. We're educating them, we're taking them on the journey, and we're setting realistic expectations. All right, I'm going to escape from here and say, from here, we can just talk and share questions and thoughts. Thank you all for all that listening that you did with me. And if you guys have any comments, questions, thoughts, now is the time. I'll give you a minute if you want to throw anything in the chat. And don't worry, I can keep talking. That is not a problem. Thank you, Juliet. I'm glad this was super helpful. I really appreciate that. I knew it was like, this one is not exciting. My term is sexy. This one is not sexy. But the reality is we're core organizers. It's really helpful though to know. And like I said, I can send you examples from your peers. So you can, and so if you put your email in that chat, I'm going to send you the examples, and they're not perfect. Not a single one of them. I got two or three. I've got a blank for you. You might want something much more complicated and in depth. I've seen some beautiful spreadsheets. I've seen people use software. What it's going to do is just give you some ideas of what those columns of work are and what stuff's getting done in those columns of work. If you want to go more in depth about we're here, what belongs in our columns, get started and then reach out to us at FCI. And one of our team members would be happy to meet with you and look at what you've got so far and give some feedback on what else might be belonging in those columns, what might be next, and talk those through with you. And then that tool, as I said, is available on our website. We also have an FCI we have video on our YouTube page showing you how to use it. And if you want, I can actually throw the peer examples I shared in my slides into the folder I'm going to send to those of you who are dropping your emails in there. So we will make sure you get those as well. All right. Yes, Space City.
Hey GQ, yeah, thanks a lot. I mean, I think a lot of these examples are really going to help, and I mean, we might be able to put a couple different types of timelines together for doing external stuff. Yeah, yeah, or even put bridge a couple of these together to make them work for us. But are there any types of editors out there, like graphics editors, that we could take like maybe one of the examples and edit it to ourselves?
The only one, so that's where we made the one we did. The one that's on the FCI website is editable. So
Oh, that's right. You did say that
yeah.
one was,
So that one's
yeah.
editable. And once you get into it, if you're anyone who's comfortable in Canva, you'll start to realize you can change almost any element. So I don't know who made that beautiful one for you guys, but I
Yeah,
want
I know
what is
it. That was before
editable,
I came on the board. I'm gonna have to do some asking and see who did that. Maybe I can get them to help again. But yeah.
right? That thing's gorgeous. If they want to talk about turning that into an edible template, you send them my way. We'd love to have that on our
Okay. All right. I'll see what I can find out for sure.
website. Thanks, Joe. Anyone else? Any questions, comments? Yeah. Yeah, nuts and bolts stuff. That's kind of what this was supposed to be about. that internal timelining is not easy, and I'm actually very impressed and grateful how easily you've all taken the news that there isn't just a template I can hand you to do your internal timelining because it's the reality is that every project has different complexities and everyone works differently. I love a good Excel spreadsheet. Some folks are like, there, I need software with every task that goes under each of those pieces, and I respect that. But we're all very different. So what we can do is we can present you with something that others have done, and we're happy to review what you've got and talk through with you. If some of them what you'll run into is not how to structure it, but like what's missing. We're in stage two, and here's we kind of outlined stage three and four. What did we miss? Send it our way. Someone from one of us from our team will meet with you and take a look at it, and we can help you figure out maybe what some of those important tasks that need to get done that might be missing are. And we're happy to do that. All right. Well, if with that then, if anyone else has any other comments, questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I am going to ask you in a couple minutes. We're ending a little early. We're going to send you a survey in your email in just a couple minutes. Please fill it out. It only takes 2 minutes. It's feedback on this session. We can get better at what we do. Find out if this kind of thing is useful to you, if you'd rather have a different kind of session, so we can keep getting better. And it helps us keep these sessions free when we can show our sponsors and our grantors that we are accomplishing what they want us to accomplish, which is helping you better organize your startup food co-ops and making sure you're supported. So it just takes 2 minutes. If you could fill it out, it is the best way to pay us back for running the series. We really appreciate it. And we have coming up, I am so excited. We don't have a session tonight. I get an evening off, but we have two really amazing ones tomorrow. Saviorism, no cooperation, yes. It's going to be a panel discussion, so lively, not instructional, the opposite of this session. It's going to be with our board president, Darnell Adams at Food Co-op Initiative. She's from the Firebrand Cooperative, and she'll have panelists Maha Selassie from Gem City Market, Erica Zenzele Hardson from One Community Market, or One Community Grocery, and Tama Yisrael, who helped to open the New Orleans Food Co-op, a successful startup food co-op, as well as an independent consultant in finance and other areas of community organizing. And they're all going to be talking about this problem that has come up in startup food co-ops over the decades now of how do we organize with our communities, not for them. We're not going to bring them the store we think they need, but to organize together to build the co-op we all want. And so they're going to talk about the challenges of that and the pitfalls we fall into as food co-ops and have a really lively discussion. I think you're going to really enjoy it. Please do join us. And then also tomorrow night, the amazing and always entertaining and educational and just don't want to miss it. Patrice Lockhart Anthony of Black Soil Media will be here to talk with us. Radical Times, Radical Origins. She's going to talk about the radical origins of food co-op organizing and how they can inform our organizing today. So big philosophical conversations to wrap up our week with. And then we have a whole nother week, Monday through Thursday next week, of FCI Live 2025. We hope you will join us for. You can find all the sessions on our website. And last but not least, thank you to our record number of sponsors and supporters for FCI Live 2025. Every single organization listed here is an organization that is invested in the well-being of startup food co-ops and the food co-op movement. We could not do it without them. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for supporting this series and making it possible.